Everything Cheselyn Amato makes is designed as a trigger or context for the experience of enchantment and wonderment in the face of ever-present uncertainty. To swoon in the midst of sublimity, in awe and delight, as well as to contend with and counter the fearsome, heinous, and harrowing. While there is rupture, disruption, eruption, open brokenheartedness is a path that can reawaken the memory and image of beauty, goodness, and justice. The state of being becomes a portal for taking action and striving for positive transformation. Via the humility of making space for transformation and inviting exquisite radiant light to flood us, we can assist in the triumph of balance and abundance. Healing light is always ignited, always within us, always available. We have to discern it and say yes. So that's a pretty heavy declarative statement given the current times that we're living in. So yes. Do you have, is there a particular body of work that you're developing right now, or something that speaks to that statement?
Yeah, well, and I would say just generally, I define myself as an interdisciplinary visual artist because basically I use any material that in a sense is imbued with a certain kind of energy. So I work across the Ds, 2D, I say length and width, and then 3D, which is stuff, includes depth, and then time arts, so experience that happens in time. So that's sound and performance and text, and then video actually projected into often these very large scale installations. So I see myself as a placemaker and an instigator of circumstances for experience, and I say of presence often, of that enchantment. And really, I'm sort of has this really ecstatic relationship to life. And so my whole modus operandi is to keep finding that spark, because I think the pilot is always lit. There's this kind of eternal light that's always with us, but sometimes it gets eclipsed. So my art for me is very much, it's the medium that's always been the greatest form for me, both to sort of rediscover and my own persistence and courage and resilience, and sometimes it's about declaring it in a way. So I extracted, so in a way I feel like I sometimes will emphasize, or certain dimensions of the work process will come forward out of these very large scale places. So behind me right now is color and light work, and I'm going to turn the light off for a minute so that it's enhanced. Just to say that I'm working with a range of reflective, radiant films and colored films where light is projected and reflected above and below. And then I've developed, I kind of have been developing a repertory of images that sort of speak to all the things that I care about. So on the one hand, it's the sublimity, the awe, the delight, and a certain general sense of choosing that. And then I am also keeping in mind, the need humanly to have tools for courage and resilience and hope, because there is so much uncertainty. And what's been very powerful for me with COVID as a beginning point in a lot of ways, and then with the conditions of erasure and oppression and the violence and the killing that's happened, and now in California with our wildfires and the general conditions of, let's say, global warming, all the layers that are, demanding that we as human beings pay attention and to try to understand where we fit into this circle of balance. So this is I call hand to hand. So that's in the spirit of engaging, how do we create the we? And then this episode, so to speak, this whole thing is kind of a candelabra or a menorah. It's a beacon, it's a lantern, it's a lamp. And so this one, we see there are two wicks of light. So it kind of, I also am really engaged with this thing of identity, but saying that we each have a specificity. We have identity factors. And then we have humanity. I mean, we just have being. And I'm driven always, the meaning of being, just that. Meanwhile, we experience life through a specificity, and then it's layered. So for me, one of the dimensions of myself, sort of as a mystically Jewishly engaged, and so every Friday night, there's this lighting of the candles, and the beauty of this idea is just that we made it to another week, through another week, and that the idea of light as a gift. And so this.
And what are we looking at? How is this constructed?
Oh, okay, so I'll tell you. So what we have here is a 12 feet of metal, I'll put the light on, but 12 feet of metal strapping that's about 1 inch, thick. And it is, I made it like a gesture, like a line on the wall. So and then I have acrylic, I have discs that are mounted as well that are holding the radiant film and the silhouettes, and they are activated.
Oh, so they're projections. Got it.
Yes. So in other words, this is an object here. It's a thin object.
Right.
And what you're seeing is projected colored light. So this is a projection of colored light above and colored light below onto the wall. So the work hardly exists. I mean, I'm really interested in ephemerality. And the fact is that there's almost nothing there, and that the sort of presentness of the experience is all light. The light and the shapes become more, in a sense, physical than the physical materials out of which they're made.
Yeah, it's neat. So basically, yeah, when the light turns off, the piece disappears. So it's about the light and the projection, which makes sense getting back to what you were saying earlier about, wanting to kind of project something different into the world because of all these ideas and things that you have that you want to motivate and make different. So there's this idea of making works that, are imbued with lightness, which is interesting.
Yes.
And so I'm curious what does a typical day in your studio look like? If somebody's looking at this and they're wondering, so we have a sense of where the inspiration comes from. So then, is it a process of sitting down and trying to decide what materiality you're going to use? Because you were saying you work in all these different platforms and with different materials. So what does that decision-making process look like?
Well, and in a certain sense, I would say that it's kind of opportunity contingent. I mean, there are times when I'm going to activate in a really large space. And so that's where often it'll be an interdisciplinary experience because site contingent. So I don't really work site specifically in that I'm not reacting per se to the site, but I tailor because of this internal motivation that's just tireless. So site contingent. So I would say that, that's sort of I was sort of thinking, how will I answer that question? Because it's not really so. Right now, it's just I've been very focused on working with this particular material because I've been going deeper into, at the moment, the technology of this work. So I'm actually really refining dimensions, particularly the lighting technology, but also, yes. So I would say that's the answer right now. There's
an underlying idea that informs your content, but sometimes it's also driven by material exploration.
Somewhat, yeah, yes, absolutely. Like sometimes there's a certain quality that that I want to express, and then I go on this treasure hunt for materials that are imbued in that way.
But I have to say, having been familiar with your work for, I think it probably since you were in that Flatlanders show, which now, gosh, would have been like 2008, I think.
Was that the Flower Garden or Slant Step?
That was the Flower Garden. And so I do think that, something that I've noticed in looking at some of the different installations you've made and the different work that you've made, there is a reoccurrent theme of bright color, like very vibrant color. And it seems like that's something that you're really responding to is illustrating and projecting these things through the mechanism of something that kind of has a very joyful feeling. I mean, even if there may be other content that you're trying to express, it's kind of hard to make anything, you know, dark if you're doing it through bright colors. You know, you can't make a sad statement that way, you know.
That's really interesting that, you know, that you say that, you raise that. I mean, and yes, I think absolutely that in a certain way, you know, thinking about the height of, let's say, European painting, that sense that the painting of the bouquets is like, what can compete, you know, in a certain sense with nature? What can draw our attention more than an actual bouquet is one thing, but that there's a way in which through our manipulation of materials that we draw attention to, invite the noticing and the participation, the noticing and the paying attention for all the beauty that is. So the thing with color is that I think it just that it's an invitation, it's an exacerbator, it's an incubator, and it's an instigator.
So a way to get someone's attention, basically.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. I mean, it is, and but it's also, you know, it's mouth-watering and luscious, and I think color fills our being, and so, you know, there's kind of multi levels to it. I mean, it's also disappearing into color and light, because ideas and meaning and concept and purpose, intention, mission, you know, so for me, there's also a sense of, I think, where the color and light for me at my center, I can go to a place where of reflection and shadow, just in the world and nature, the flickering and the movement. It's so relaxing to me, like the surf of the ocean, just so somehow it's related for me.
And what, you know, because we're getting close to the end of the conversation, if somebody wanted to buy your work, because what we're looking at here is something that's almost installation driven, or it is installation driven. I mean, it's 12 feet long. So that's really, you know, the scale of that is pretty intense. So, you know, if somebody wants to inquire about your works or what sorts of things, I know that you've done works on paper and 2D work as well. So can people contact you through your website or?
Absolutely. So it's www.cheselynamato.com. Extensive amounts of work are there. These are offered. I mean, this is a very large structure, but I call these episodes. They are actually available totally separately as individual. You know.
Oh, so somebody, if you make the projections as individual pieces as well.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Plus, I am really also very focused on custom works, because I see these as really talisman, like they're active tools for transformation and healing. So I am working with some of the images or ideas or mantras that people have, and creating these light works for individuals.
So like spiritual objects, essentially.
Yes, you know, that's a dimension of them, absolutely. And I've been making them for different kinds of organizations as well. So as welcome, I've lately been working with the idea of the welcome lantern as the way that a community enters into a building.
Wow.
They also, you know, and they also exist as these archival digital prints that can be very, very small. And they've been in exhibition at mural scale, 12 feet, 6 by 16 feet, that type of thing.
Well, this has been so great. And so, and people can follow up on your directory page as well if they want to get more information.
Absolutely. And I have at Cheselyn Amato Instagram and Cheselyn.amato at Facebook. So, yes.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time, Cheselyn. It's been so good to see you. It's been a while. So this has been really great. I really had a good time.